What's he saying? There were dinosaurs back with Adam and Eve?
Welcome to Culture Screen, where we analyze culture. In this episode, we are summarizing the fourth episode from season 6 of the Sopranos series titled The Fleshy Part of the Thigh. The episode first aired on April 2nd, 2006. In the beginning, we see Tony is still thinking about the Ojibwa saying posted on his wall in the hospital room. He doesn't know who placed it there, and he sets out to find out who placed it there. At first, Tony thinks Janice must have posted the quote, but after she says she did not post it up, Aaron and Bob Brewster stop by to pray with Tony. Aaron Arkway was Janice's ex-boyfriend. Bob Brewster, on the other hand, is a pastor who comes to try and convince Tony to go to his church. After Bob and Aaron engage in conversation with Tony, Tony grows irritated at them and ends up having an argument with Bob and Aaron after they try to push their religious philosophy on him. This is problematic for Tony, especially after having survived a near-death experience. Later on, when Hesh and Beth stop by to visit Tony, Pastor Bob stops in a second time. Bob notices Tony has a dinosaur book on a nearby table, and when the pastor sees the book, he shuffles through it and claims that dinosaurs did not exist millions of years ago because, according to him, the Earth itself is only 6,000 years old. Tony and Chris look at each other and the pastor in disbelief. Before the pastor leaves, he invites Tony to his church. By doing this, he provides Tony with yet another opportunity to leave his life of crime and sin behind for a life he can dedicate to God. Throughout Tony's stay, he encounters other individuals who are in the hospital for various reasons. A musician named Deluxe is hospitalized after being gunned down. After Tony bumps into Deluxe in the hallway, Lux ends up inviting Tony to his room that night to watch the boxing fight on his satellite TV. Tony agrees, and later on that night, he heads to Deluxe's room, and John Schwinn is there as well. John is a physicist, and when they ask John who he thinks will win the fight, he replies that the two men fighting on the screen are not really two individuals, but merely a part of the same entity. John goes on to explain that individual identities are an illusion, and that existence itself is interconnected. Deluxe agrees, nods his head, and says everything is everything. John mentions Schrodinger's equation, and it goes over Tony's head. In this episode, like the previous one, we are presented with multiple representations of Eastern philosophy. The last person to speak to Tony about these ideas is John Schwinn, only he tries to explain it to Tony through physics. In another scene, Bobby is walking down the hallway when he hears one of Deluxe's associates, Marvin, writing a song. Marvin explains that as a result of the vicious attack against Deluxe, his record sales will increase dramatically. Marvin envies the success made by Deluxe. While he is speaking to Bobby in the hallway, he explains to Bobby that being shot is the key to a rapper's financial success because it ends up boosting their credibility as gangster rap. As a result of this conversation, Bobby recommends to Marvin that he should allow someone to do the same to him as a way of boosting his record sales and career as well. Marvin agrees and he likes the idea, and so he ends up paying Bobby $7,000 to do the same to him. In a follow-up scene, Bobby ambushes Marvin as he is coming out of a business and ends up shooting him in the rear end rather than the fleshy part of the thigh like they originally agreed on.
Well, it must be nice to have something to hold on to.
Remember, I am summarizing this entire series as well as other popular works of literature, movies, and TV shows as well. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next episode or series. Let me know what you'd like me to summarize in the comments section below. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter for additional content, visit our merch store, and support us on Patreon if you can. Doing this helps my channel out tremendously.
Some people would have you believe dinosaurs existed millions of years ago.
In another scene, Richard Barone passes away, and Tony's Barone Sanitation is inherited by Richard's son, Jason. Jason is approached by Johnny Sack, and Johnny offers to buy Barone Sanitation from him as a way of generating extra income while he is in jail. Jason, however, has no idea that Barone Sanitation was simply a front company used by Tony to launder his money through. When Jason tries to sell the company, he is sent to speak to Tony along with Paulie, and they end up persuading him not to sell the company. Tony explains to Jason that Barone Sanitation offers him his health insurance and W-2, which allows him to claim to have a legitimate income. Tony ends up negotiating directly with Johnny Sack through Phil and Paulie. Jason, however, ends up signing a deal with Chucky Cinelli, a Lupertazzi crime family associate. Chucky does not allow Jason to back out of the deal after he speaks to Tony. Chucky denies his request and says that the Barone routes are now his for the taking. When a Barone sanitation driver is driving along his route, he encounters a Cinelli garbage truck, and when he asserts that they are on his route, he is assaulted and badly beaten by the Cinelli drivers. When Tony hears about this, he grows enraged and yells at Jason for not bringing this up to him sooner before one of his drivers was viciously attacked. Tony feels that Johnny and the New York crew are taking advantage of him being hospitalized. Simultaneously, Johnny Sack feels that Tony is the one being inconsiderate, especially because he is in jail fighting for his freedom. As we catch up with Paulie, we learn that his aunt Dottie is not actually his aunt, but instead she is Paulie's actual mother. Dottie knows she is slowly dying, and she decides to reveal her deepest secret to Paulie. Dottie explains that as a young nun, she met a soldier named Russ during World War II. During the war, she became pregnant and gave birth to Paulie. As a way of hiding her pregnancy from the church, she passed Paulie on to her sister Nucci. Nucci, Paulie's aunt, then took Paulie as her own son and raised him to believe she was his true mother. This news devastates Paulie. Paulie feels betrayed and also dives into an identity crisis just like Tony's. Paulie is particularly afraid of finding out that he isn't full-blooded Italian, as this would destroy his status in the mafia. Paulie is so hurt that he ends up skipping Dottie's funeral altogether. He heads over to Nucci's apartment and throws her flat-screen TV that he bought her right out the window. When he tells all of this to Tony, Tony reminds him that he must learn to see the bigger picture in his experience. We see Tony has learned a thing or two during his own experience with death after all. Tony reminds Paulie that although they did lie to him, it was Nucci who raised him, and that she was always there for him through good and bad. While they are speaking, Jason's mother, Helen, drops in. She brings Tony a cooked dish and proceeds to beg Tony not to hurt her son for what he did. Jason's mother knows Barone was a front and understands perfectly well that Jason may be in harm's way, especially after causing Tony to lose the company while he was hospitalized. Tony assures her that nothing bad will happen to Jason. As Helen is begging Tony to protect her son, Paulie is reminded of what a mother's love truly looks like. Paulie realizes at that moment that he never had or felt his mother's true love his entire life. Helen's pleading also reminds Paulie of his aunt Nucci and how she did play the role of mother to him his entire life to a degree. This scene ends up overwhelming Paulie with guilt, and he walks outside to cry. Paulie realizes that although he never had his real mother, Nucci was always there for him to love and care, just like Helen loves Jason. Later on, Paulie is so envious of the love Helen shows to Jason that he catches up with him and beats him down by the waterfront. He also extorts Jason and tells him that going forward, he will pay him $4,000 a month. Paulie walks away with a menacing look on his face as he is able to quickly turn emotional trauma and pain into violence and financial gain like a true gangster. In the final scene, Tony reaches out to Janice and tells her that he knows he is supposed to be dead and that going forward, he will treat every day as a gift. Tony is met with a heavy gust of wind, reminding us about the Ojibwa's saying. Tony may in fact be changing his life's direction after all. The question is, does he still have time, or is he a little too late?
So after this, from now on, every day is a gift.
We upload new videos every week, so subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the like button as well. Click the notification bell to be notified of when we upload these videos. See you on the next episode of Culture Screen.